Welcome to In the News for August the 19th, 2022. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. Good to see you again. How about a quick little public service announcement, as we are prone
Good way to start.
do? Yeah, well, anytime, it's a small dot, a tiny dot, but an important update. This is iOS 15.6.1. A lot of points in there.
Yeah, came out this week. It's another one of these things that I say another one because unfortunately we've seen them before all the time, including this year, where Apple releases a fix for something that may have been actively exploited. And that's the magic language, right? When you see that maybe in the wild, maybe exploited, that means that Apple doesn't know, but it is seriously possible that somebody out there is using this one right now. I read the technical explanations as to what they fixed, something about kernel vulnerabilities and executing. It went way over my head. But suffice it to say, there's something bad out there that may actually be out there. But if you apply this fix, you're good. So the bottom line is do the update. So this is not
I did mine both this morning. It's the iPhone and the iPad. I don't think it's a watch OS update, right? But
no,
iPhone,
but it is
iPad,
also on the
and
Mac
macOS.
I updated my Mac too, and I ran all three updates with no problems. So it's just a PSA to install your updates, be safe. Hopefully none of us would be vulnerable anyway, but no reason to take the chance.
Right. iPhone 14. How about getting excited? Maybe 14 days to the iPhone 14. Well, maybe a few more than just 14 days, but you started off referring to let's still call it a rumor, right? This is somebody we've talked about quite a bit with Mark Gurman. He writes for Bloomberg, but he's very reliable. A lot of the stuff he talks about seems to come pretty true. And he thinks that Apple is going to announce the iPhone 14 on September 7th. What do you think about that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I could have told you on January 1st of this year, as I started out today, that it's most likely to be either the week of September 5th or the week of September 12th, because Apple, at least for the last decade, this is when they like to announce new iPhones, is the first or second full week of September. And there was an exception in 2020 because of the COVID, and Apple, I think, even announced that, things were slowed and delayed, and so they were a month late. But other than that, you look back the last 10 years, and they always do the first or second week. They've done the second week more than the first week. Mark Gurman is predicting it's the first week, and Apple usually does these announcements on a Tuesday, but when there's a holiday on a Monday, they usually do it on a Wednesday. And of course, this year there'd be the holiday on the Monday in America here. So with September 5th being a holiday, September 7th would be the likely day if it's going to be the first week. So the real thing is some inside source at Apple presumably has told him it'll be that first week. And so he's done the math.
I love all of your calculations today, Jeff. You're talking about all of the introductions that have occurred in the first week for 3 years, right? 2014, 2015, 16, and the second week for the 6 years. You listed them all on this, and I just always appreciate the fact that you go into such detail on here. So we would, like you said, you could have predicted it would be sometime between maybe these 2 weeks or somewhere in September, and it's almost to the point where it's almost becoming expected, as it were, which I think the first thing most people think about on this quickly, Jeff, is, okay, do I need to buy a new iPhone now? And you linked to another good story from one of our favorite reporters here, Joanna from the Wall Street Journal, was about, okay, what Apple gadget should you buy right now and which one should you not buy right now?
Yeah. And, clearly, and I do not buy an iPhone today because, whether it's that first week or that second week of September, and unless you were in a dire straits, I seriously hope that you can hold on for a few more weeks because we're going to have a new iPhone announced. It doesn't mean it'll be available right away. Sometimes there's a delay, but it's around the corner. And as she points out, AirPods are something else that if you can hold off on them, and if you're looking to upgrade, there have been a lot of rumors of new AirPods coming out. My guess is that Apple, and this is what Mark Gurman suggests, that Apple is going to announce a new iPhone and a new Apple Watch in early September. And I predict that there's not much of a prediction. This is what they usually do. They'll probably be something about the iPad in early October, and maybe also some Mac updates in early October. AirPods could fit anywhere in there. AirPods make a little bit more sense with the iPhone, but they could also fit in with the iPad as well. So if there's new AirPods, you're a little bit on the edges. And as for Macs and stuff like that, she has her recommendations on which ones you should or should not buy. But having said that, these are just recommendations. I will tell you, I broke this rule. One of the recommendations that's out there is don't buy a Mac Mini right now because Apple looks like they're on the cusp of of coming out with new ones.
Right.
But I will tell you,
Right.
my mother-in-law, my wife's mom, she has used a Mac Mini for a long time, and her old one needed to be replaced. And my wife was going up for a trip, and we said, let's just get it now versus wait till later, because she would never notice a difference between an M1 or an M2. Either one of them are going to be so much faster than what she has before. So obviously there's exceptions to these rules. But suffice it to say, if you're in the know enough to be listening to this podcast, then you probably know that you would not want to buy a new iPhone in late August. You want to wait till September.
Well, going back to Gurman's report here, he's talking about he thinks the iPhone 14 is going to look fairly similar to the iPhone 13, although something that you talked about just a little bit as well, you think that you agree with Gurman, it sounds like, that they are going to take away that mini version, right? We had the iPhone Pro Max, the iPhone 13 Pro, the iPhone 13, and then they had a mini version, right? And we think that they're going to do away with the mini version this time.
Yeah, and the reason I think that there's something to this rumor is only that it's been widely reported for a very long time.
Right.
Apple has had small iPhones in that mini form factor. Well, of course, way back when that was the form factor. But ever since Apple started making bigger phones, they've sort of dipped back and going back to that small form factor. They did it for 2 years in a row with the iPhone 12 and iPhone 13. But there were so many rumors out there that was the end of it. Like Apple had planned those 2 years and that they're done, because Apple seems to think, and of course they would know what the customer demand is, that there's not as much demand for their small phones, although the people that use them are passionate. They love them. They talk about how nice it is to have something small.
Jason Snell, I think. We talked about a story from Jason.
Example.
Yeah,
exactly. He did an article, I want to say it was from Macworld or something, saying how much he loves his small phone. And those people will just probably hold on, if they love them that much, hold on to that phone for another year. And maybe in 2023, Apple will come out with, you never know. I mean, they may return the form factor, although I suspect that if they do abandon it this fall, they'll probably abandon it for a few years. But maybe in the SE model, anything's possible. But what Apple seems to be saying is that more people are interested in a big phone. And right now, the only way to get a big iPhone is to get the top of the line, the Cadillac model. Which, if you want to have all the whiz-bang features and all the nice cameras, that's great, but they are expensive. So the idea is that Apple, instead of selling the Mini, would sell a max version of the entry-level iPhone. So that it wouldn't have, maybe all the fancy schmancy cameras and the other stuff. It won't be a top of the line, but it will be a bigger phone. And so when folks walk into a store and say, I want a big phone, but I don't necessarily want to get the highest price phone,
the high end,
that's what they'll do. And that's what Apple has to decide. For people that don't want the standard iPhone, do they want the standard iPhone that's a little bit smaller in a mini, or do they want the standard iPhone that's a little bit bigger in the Max? And people are predicting that this year Apple's placing their bet on the Max.
Yeah. And so I think Gurman is probably going to be fairly correct on the actual date. I feel like that's a big picture item. But he was also talking about down here, I thought it was interesting, that for the iPhone 14, he thinks Apple is going to replace that front-facing notch, that little notch that's in the front of the iPhone 13 that's been there, since the 12 or the 11 or so, where, with the Face ID. But he says they'll replace it with a pill-shaped hole for Face ID sensors and a hole punch size area for the camera. That would be pretty neat. I would like to see it. I feel like that would be a little bit more screen real estate, even though I've kind of gotten used to the notch being up there at the top of the screen now.
Yeah, I've heard this rumor for a while. I have to admit, and this is the last thing you said, Brett, when the notch first came out, I guess was with the iPhone 10 way back when, right? When it first came out, it was the thing that everybody was talking about. But you know what? After using the phone for a month or so, I forgot about it. And I don't even see it. So if my next iPhone has a smaller notch that's a little bit more like a circle as opposed to what it is now, I will notice it that first week and say, oh, wow. And then I'll probably forget about it after that, because it's not like I'm putting that much useful information up there.
Right.
I have heard rumors, though, and again, they're just rumors. We know that Apple likes to make the camera better every year in some way.
Of course.
I've heard some rumors lately, who knows if there's any validity to them, but that this is going to be one of the years that Apple's going to really make the camera better. Sometimes they have small bumps and sometimes big bumps. I'm always excited about that. So other than that, though, I don't really have, I've been hearing all the rumors. My ear has been to the ground like yours too, but I haven't heard much about, other big new hardware features that are going to come out this fall, which makes me think that maybe when Mark Gurman says that it's going to be the same form factor as before with some slight changes like the notch and maybe cameras and stuff. Maybe that's it. Maybe this is just going to be one of those, you can call it incremental or not, depending upon how important the new features are to you. If a new camera is important to you, then this is a great upgrade, but we'll see.
I just wish Apple would come out and say, yeah, what Gurman said. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Well, they will they'll say it on perhaps September 7th.
But until then, we're just going to keep guessing.
Yeah.
So another tool that you linked to today, very interesting. And I feel like this could be something that could be used for good or for evil in one of these situations, Jeff. But let's focus more on the good aspect, because I really think there could be some excellent uses for this story. This was from the Washington Post by Tatum Hunter, and they are talking about ways where you would want to maybe hide some photos, or maybe place some photos in a private vault or an area that may not get picked up by, like, shared albums or appear in the photo widget. I thought this was a really good story. When I first looked at it, I thought, I don't know, people could really use this, for some nefarious perspectives. But then I started thinking, you know what? I've got a lot of pictures that are like, documents that I've taken, maybe of my, my parents, for example, or even some, old pictures of my kids that I just don't want those pictures to maybe bubble up in sort of like my photos widget, something along those lines. And it sounds like you're the same way. This was a really good story. I'm glad you linked to it.
Yeah, it had some great options in it that I had not thought about. People obviously, nude pictures in your phone is the people think about. And, that can be there for a legitimate reason. Maybe it's a picture of your spouse or your significant other or whatever.
Sure.
Or maybe, of course, it could be something horrible like child pornography. But let's just assume that it's a legitimate picture, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be that. One example that occurred to me is not too long ago, I had this injury on my leg, and the doctor had me sort of take a picture of it every day, and it was sort of gross because it was like a scar. Okay. I certainly wouldn't want that to bubble up on the front page of my iPad with the little widget that shows photos, but I had to take those pictures every day for a series of days just to see how the wound progressed over time. So that was something that I would just prefer to keep that out of the main portion of the app.
Right.
And so the suggestions go through here include that on the iPhone itself, you can, of course, there's a hidden pictures folder that's on by default, and you can put pictures in there, and he even describes how you can make some little changes to settings so that it makes it almost, very difficult if somebody had access to your phone to dig in and find that hidden album. Maybe not impossible, but at least it would sort of keep it out of the normal public eye, which is good. But I also thought it was interesting that he discussed some third-party apps, which I had never looked at before, as I mentioned, that can take care of it. I mean, this one app that he was talking about, Private Photo Vault, it has an interesting feature that you put your photos in there so that they're in a separate vault, which I think makes good sense. I mean, if you really don't want them to show up in photos by accident, get them out of photos. That's what I would say.
Delete them, right?
Exactly. Delete them or move them somewhere else. That way you never see them by mistake. So if you put them in this app, the idea is that you have to have a special password. And so if somebody just happened to have your phone, they wouldn't know that special password to get into it.
Right.
Or it was a funny feature that if somebody actually makes you unlock the phone, like, I don't know, like, I can imagine like a teenager who has some sensitive photos that they don't want to show their parents. They can use what they call a decoy password, that instead of typing in the real password, they type in 1234, and you put some other photos in there, so that way you can show somebody, oh, this is what my secret photos are, even though it's not your real secret photos.
It's not.
It's a pretty clever idea. And then there's also this thing, they have this feature called Private Camera, that if somebody types the wrong password into the app, it will take a picture of the person that's holding your phone and then let you know, so you can see, which one of your, silly friends was trying to break into your app. So it's got some interesting features that I hadn't thought about. And if you think that this is something that may apply to you, now that one is, I think, it's a subscription app, so you have to pay for it. But
I think he said that, right?
Yeah, so it's something to think about. These are
$40 a year, but it's still,
so it's not cheap. That's real money. But there's lots of options out there, and I think this is a problem that a lot of people face.
I like the way he said, even up here again. I know let me say, I suspect where the minds of many people go, because when I first started reading that's exactly where I was going to go. That I want to hide some things in here. But he had some good points, just like I mentioned earlier. Maybe you snapped an image of your social security card or your birth certificate or a W-2 form, or he said maybe you want to keep your kids' bathtub photos in a safe place. If you're not ready to delete those photos, which is what I said, right? Maybe you don't want to delete those photos. but you still want to keep them. Where do you keep them so that they just don't like bubble up in your memories? I love that feature, by the way, on my Photos app. You and I have talked about this. If you have your Photos widget on the iPhone, and it'll bubble up things like, we go on vacation every year. So every year it shows me vacations from, photos from the past vacations. And I love that. I show that to the kids and I'm like, hey, remember when we did this? I love that feature, but you can pull those same photos, not just memories from vacation, but also, some of the photos of some of the documents there. So
he also mentions former boyfriend and girlfriends and ex-spouse. Maybe you don't want to delete the photo forever because you might want to look at something, but maybe you don't want those photos to be a part of your normal life anymore. And so there's good options here. Yeah.
Glad you linked to that. How many times have you stood today, Jeff? What does your stand ring say? I think I'm barely on. Let me see what I've got on here. Maybe I've only done 3 times. I've only stood 3 times. How about you?
I'm up to. I've got more than that, but not many more than that. Certainly not what Lisa Jackson has here.
Oh my goodness!
I just thought this was really cute.
This is how you could gamify the Apple Watch and your stand ring and all of your rings. Goodness gracious! I love this. I'm so glad you linked to it.
Lisa Jackson is the vice president at Apple. I noted that she's from New Orleans just because a little pride because I live in New Orleans. But she used to be the head of EPA and she does all their environmental stuff at Apple. And she pointed out that, this was a picture that it scrolled apart on Twitter and I saw that she had 1,700 red points. That's a lot of red points, right? 200 green points, 201 green points. I'm like, oh, good for you. That you really worked out to get 201 green points.
Right.
And then 28 stand hours. I'm like, wait a minute. There's 24 hours in a day. And she stood for 28 hours. But as she explained, that you go to Australia and then you fly back home because the time changes, you get a few more extra hours to get those stand hours. So I thought that was a cute picture.
That is awesome.
If anyone out there can beat 28 stand hours in a day, I would love to see it.
Speaking of the Apple Watch, yet another story. I don't think I'm ever going to get tired of you linking to some of these stories. How the Apple Watch saved my life. And we've talked about this, for AFib or if you have an irregular heartbeat or something similar, but I had never thought about this from this reporter, right? Was it Justin himself or is he reporting on
this
somebody?
Is his own. He's telling his own story here, which is really interesting. He works for CNET. And like you say, you sort of feel like we've heard the stories. It's the same story over and over again. It's the AFib report that you went to go see the cardiologist. But this was a different one because he says that he's a diabetic and he has
type 1 diabetes, right?
Yeah, he has a special machine that monitors his blood sugar level and it communicates with his Apple Watch. And so it can give him alerts on his Apple Watch. And what I thought was just amazing is the story that he looks at his watch and it says, you got a real problem here. He had just woken up. So he went to his the refrigerator and he got some orange juice and he drank it. And then right after he drank the orange juice, it says right there, I ran to the fridge, I grabbed it, and then I passed out. And we're like, oh my goodness. And then it says that once his blood sugar levels were back to normal, a couple minutes later, he sort of woke up. And it was only because he had that orange juice shortly before that he was in good shape. So I'm like, oh my goodness, thank goodness for him that he got that alert because that could have been horrible. It's
and like you say, he woke up a few minutes later because his sugar levels went back to normal, just like you said, Jeff, I think. But it's like the only reason that he was able to get there as fast is because he saw that alert on his Apple Watch, ran to the fridge, drank the orange juice. That's just great. I love it. And he also talks about the fall detection on here, the medical ID component, which I think you and I have talked about as well, the emergency SOS. Just a really neat story to remind yourself of all of the capabilities here on the Apple Watch. Make sure, like that medical ID, I always tell people, you need to make sure you get that set up. I mean, that is one of the first things. Like, it would just be ridiculous to have an Apple Watch or even an iPhone, even if you don't have an Apple Watch, and not set up that medical ID. Please go and do that as soon as you can. But that was a great story. As I said, I'm always going to enjoy hearing about those all the time. Let's go from Apple Watches to Styluses. Styluses. Well, okay. This, I always like it when you link to something like this. It's a story from Cult of Mac. And of course, today, I am pretty much always going to recommend that if you have an iPad and you want a stylus, just get the Apple Pencil. You're going to pay a premium for it, but it works so much better. However, a blast from the past, Jeff, is the company Adonit, 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 because you and I both used Adonit styluses before Apple created their own Apple Pencil, and they're still going. And I say good for you. I mean, if there's an option, it's certainly less expensive, but I thought this was an interesting option here. This was called the Adonit Neo Pro that you linked to today.
Indeed. For those that are watching the video portion right now, you see me bopping my head because I have a little cup. It's actually an Apple mug that I have right over here. And I've got a bunch of styluses from back in the day when I used to try out like simple little styluses like this.
There's
one. Of the classic Adonit styluses was the one that had that little plastic thing on the end of it, which I really love this stylus. That was a great stylus. And then I see that I have the Adonit Note here, which was a nice Adonit stylus. Adonit made some of the best. The Adonit Note stylus that came out in 2020 with the pandemic that had the ultraviolet on it so that you could use it to scan and destroy things. There's the stylus that looks like a number 2 pencil, which I thought was always sort of funny. I don't know what they made that. Nothing but styluses here. But again,
that's beautiful.
There were so many. I show this to show that there used to be such variety in the stylus market, and then Apple came out with the Apple Pencil, and it was so much better that it was like, why would you consider something else? And then Apple came out with the Apple Pencil version 2, and it was so much better that again, why would somebody want something else? But Adonit's still in the game, and so the big thing they compete on now is price. Right, because an Apple Pencil 2, although you can get it on Amazon for about $100 now. I think the retail price is like $130. I think, whereas this Adonit product is like $40, $45, and they had previously had the Adonit. It's called the Neo, right? The Adonit Neo would attach to the side of an iPad, which is one of the great features of the second generation Apple stylus. But it wouldn't charge. You still needed USB to charge it. But this new one, it will actually charge while it's attached to the side of it. And I think unlike the Apple Pencil from the pictures, it looks like it actually has sort of a glow at the very back of it, like where an eraser might be in a pencil, that changes color so you can see, is it still charging or is it fully charged? Which is sort of an interesting little feature too. Again, my Apple Pencil, it pretty much is always charged, so I never really am concerned about how much charge level it has. But it's so much cheaper. So if you think I'm interested in a stylus, and we're going to talk in a few minutes, and another reason why you might be interested in stylus. If you're interested in a stylus, but I just don't think it's worth $100 for me, is it worth $45? Then Adonit has an answer. And although I haven't tried this particular Neo, with all the other Adonit ones that I have right here at my desk, it's a good company. They make good quality products. I would give them the benefit of the doubt, and I would try it out if you think it might be for you.
I totally agree with that. In fact, if you don't want an Apple Pencil for whatever the reason that you just don't want an Apple product or you don't want to pay the premium on the Apple Pencil, absolutely, I would say look at Adonit. Like that would be my next option. There's a few other, very few now that do anything on styluses now because they know that Apple Pencil is available and out there. But I don't think that this one's actually available out there, by the way, because when I clicked on the website for Adonit, it said pre-order. You can get the version that doesn't charge, that just attaches magnetically, but the Neo Pro, which is the one that charges, when I clicked on it earlier, it was you're right, available. So we'll see. In fact, there you go. You're clicking on it right now. Pro. And they want you to subscribe, and you can see there. I think it's just a pre-order type thing. It's a pre-order right now. It's exactly what. This was from Ed Hardy, and again, you and I have talked about Ed Hardy. He's been around for so long, and definitely trust his thought on that. So, as you alluded to, Jeff, one of the reasons you might want to consider absolutely getting an Apple Pencil or an Adonit Neo Pro, just get a stylus with your iPad, is for the Scribble feature in iPad OS, which I got to be honest, Jeff, I don't think Apple does a good enough job at telling people about this Scribble thing. Because honestly, I forget about it, and I only remember it if I have my stylus in my hand and I like hit the search box or I'm in the Notes app and I just start, I think I'm in the writing mode, and it automatically, as I'm writing, it transcribes the letters or the words into text, like editable text. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember. That's what they call the Scribble feature. And it's been available for quite a while, but now the story that you linked to is that it's finally come, I've been waiting on this, to the Microsoft Office apps. And this is great.
Yeah. So Scribble is nice because if you just have your pencil in your hand, and if you don't have access to an external keyboard, but you wanted to type something, if the pencil's right there, like you say, putting something in a search box, you can just scribble in the search box and just write the word, dog, D-O-G, and then you don't have to pull up the keyboard and then just search for the word dog. When I first heard of a Scribble for Microsoft Word, I will be honest with you, Brett, my initial reaction was, yeah, as if I'm going to write an entire document by hand. You know, maybe in the old days of, you know, Abraham Lincoln was writing in hand, like nobody does that anymore. But the more I looked into this, that's not what this is for. Although I guess you could do it if you really wanted to. What it's really for, and I'm actually excited about this feature, is for editing. So if you have the type of job in which somebody sends you a Microsoft Word file, or maybe it's your own Microsoft Word file, and you want to be able to edit it on the iPad. And as an attorney, like, I live in Microsoft Word. I'm drafting documents and I'm reviewing documents from other people all the time. And sometimes I do it on my computer, where I will turn on the red line edit feature and track changes, I guess is what it's technically called. Yeah, in Word, and then, you know, I will, you know, select text with my mouse and, you know, retype stuff. And that's fine if I'm in front of my computer. But sometimes I might just be reviewing a document while I'm sitting on my couch with the iPad. And in the past, if I wanted to annotate the document just using my stylus, what I would do is I would convert the document into PDF, and then I would just draw on it. So I might circle a paragraph or circle a word and then write in the margins, you know, instead of saying increase, why don't you say elevate, or I don't know, whatever the edits are. So I would just do it by that. And then I would send it back to the person as a PDF document, and they would have to like look at it and make the changes and stuff like that. So what this new feature looks like it's really promising for is you open up the Word document on Microsoft Word on your iPad, and then with your pencil in your hand, if you see a word that you want to delete, you just, the scribble function for that is just like like up and down over the word, just like you were sort of scratching through it on a piece of paper. And then, or maybe way back when on a Apple Newton, and it makes the word disappear. Or if you just, you can either circle the word or you can tap it with your finger. And then once the word or the phrase is selected, you might not want to type like a whole paragraph, or I mean, to handwrite a whole paragraph. But if you just want to change like a couple words of a phrase, or if you just want to insert something, you can do a little caret thing, and then you can just write. And then just as soon as you finish writing the letters or the words, it will be translated into text. And you haven't had to use a keyboard. So sitting back and revising a brief without needing to use a keyboard, whether it's on screen or external, I can actually see that being really useful. I mean, you're sitting on a plane and you're monitoring a document. And again, the key point is at the end of the day, it's not like the old days where it's a PDF file that I just wrote stuff on the margins. I've truly made the edit to the document. So either I make it in the track changes mode, in which case the other author can decide to accept or reject my changes, or if I have that mode turned off, I can just directly edit the document and make changes right there. So this just came out. I found out about it yesterday. I think technically it looks like my iPad downloaded the new version of Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office on Monday. So it just came out, but I want to use this a little bit, but this might be a really useful feature for people that work with Word and have an iPad. So I want everybody to know about it. You know, if you work with documents, you know who you are, try it out. And I might write about this on the website in the future, because
I think it's
really
worth it.
Yeah.
So I've been waiting for this for a while. I think I mentioned, because and I feel like I have to explain to people and to myself, because sometimes I forget, this is not drawing on a Word document, which you're still able to do, right? You have drawing tools on the document, and you can tap on a pen and you can change it, you know, to red pen or a blue pen or black or whatever. You can change the thickness, and you can literally write on the Word document as if you had printed it out and written with like a ballpoint pen. But the Scribble is now another little pen tool, right? But it has a little capital A on it. I believe that's right, Jeff, if you're looking at yours.
Yeah, that's what I'm pulling one up. So when you're in Word, if you tap the Draw tab at the top, which is all your draw tools, before this week, what you saw was a bunch of different pens and pencils. So like a thick highlighter or a pencil, where you would, like you said, Brett, you would draw a circle on a document. But now you have this new tool, which looks like just a white pen that's got the letter A on it. And that's the Scribble tool. So once you tap on that tool, now when I use my stylus to circle and to write, I am actually editing the document.
Yeah, that's, like I said, it's just a little mind blowing to me. Again, I've used the Scribble tool in the past because the Apple Notes app is the most of the place where I've been using it, and it's been working there for a long time because, of course, that's an Apple app. I think I've used it in, it seemed like one other app. I can't even really remember. Maybe in something like Notability or Good Notes, but usually I'm handwriting there as opposed to, you know, editable text. And I've been waiting for this, so I'm thrilled that Microsoft finally has allowed this. to be incorporated into the app. So yes, I would love for you to do a full deep dive into this, and I might even do a video at Apps and Law as well, just because I think it can really be pretty important. And by the way, quickly before we jumped on today on the call, we are talking about both the standalone Microsoft Word app, and then Microsoft also has what I call the all-in-one Office app. It's just the Office, Microsoft Office, but it allows you to edit Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, and Excel spreadsheets in it. So I believe now, as long as you make sure you get the updated version of those apps, and that update may have just arrived, it may have just hit within the last 24 hours or so, then you want to make sure you have that updated. But I think now it's in both the standalone Word app and in the all-in-one Office app as well.
Yeah, and you're reminding me when you talk about the all-in-one app that the Office app, which includes not only Word, but also Excel and PowerPoint, you can use the Scribble feature in the other apps too. I think Excel, I'm not positive, but you can definitely use it on Keynote. And, you know, Keynote's a great one because on a Keynote slide, you may only have 4 words, like it's like a PowerPoint. On a, I'm sorry, I said Keynote. That's the Apple product.
Yeah, that's okay.
Microsoft is called PowerPoint.
I'm making sure.
Thank you for catching me. On PowerPoint, the word you know, some people like to have slides with tons of words, but we all know that the most effective slides are the ones that just have a few words. And so if you only have 3 words on the slide to begin with, using a stylus to change those 3 words, I mean, that's a very minor amount of handwriting and a lot more easier
That's
than
exactly
the keyboard. Because then when you bring the keyboard up, it takes up half the screen, so it covers up half the slide. Whereas when you know, so there's good reasons to use it. So I'm excited about this. This is a good feature.
Yeah, that's exactly, just quickly, like the PowerPoint, I usually have it like a bullet point, right? So maybe like just a single sentence of a few words. But I hate to have to, normally I'm using my fingers, or sometimes I do have the stylus if I'm just going around doing some edits, you know, and selecting items on a PowerPoint presentation. But I hate to put my pen down. You know, sometimes I don't even have the keyboard attached. I'm just using the iPad without the keyboard. Like, then I have to go back there, or I have to put the on-screen keyboard. It's just so much. I'm just excited to see how this could kind of streamline some of the stuff. I know we're talking about this quite a bit, but people can tell that we're getting pretty excited. But more to come, right? You and I both will be playing with this a little bit more, and we'll report on it maybe later and do some in-depth posts on that as well. So then let us move on to In the Know, and let's talk about a tip. So I am on my last day of vacation, just to let folks know. But one of the things that struck me is I didn't realize how much I would be referring to the weather app while I was on vacation. And it's because we're in an area where we can either go fishing, or we can go swimming, or we can go boating, or we can go hiking. So it's like, yeah, I do want to know, like, what's the next day going to hold, right? So that I can make sure that I'm prepared for the next day. Well, I have started, I think since iOS 15, right? For the last year or two, Jeff, I've just used the default Apple weather app that's on the iPhone, and for good reason. Before that, I used Dark Sky, which I know a lot of people have used. Dark Sky has been around for a long time, and it has been well known for many, many years as one of the best apps. So good, in fact, that in March 2020, Apple purchased the company Dark Sky. And so we waited for a while. I think it was maybe a year or several months, right? We were waiting for Apple to kind of incorporate all the best features from Dark Sky into the default iPhone app, the weather app, which is not on the iPad, by the way. It's just on the or maybe it is now, right? I know that's there's the widget or something. Anyway, I'm just looking at my iPhone all the time, because my iPhone, if I open up the app, I've got a weather widget on there, and it pulls it up and it gives me all the information. Well, I tend to like that, but a couple of things happened the last couple of days. First of all, a couple of people I ran into when we were talking about the weather, they still have the Dark Sky app on their iPhone, Jeff. And I tried to tell them, you know, you don't need Dark Sky. Oh, it's the best app. I said, I know it's the best app. That's why Apple bought it, and they've incorporated it now, and you need to get rid of it, because in about by the end of this year, 2022, Apple has announced, right, they're going to take the Dark Sky app away, because it's not going to be a standalone app. It's just going to be incorporated into the default weather app. So, but all of that came about that I was constantly going to it. I know there are other excellent weather apps available out there, Jeff. You and I have talked about Carrot Weather a whole lot. I know there's like Weather Tracker with weather stations. I know there are excellent weather apps. I just like the simplicity, but the comprehensiveness of the information, at least to my taste. The default weather app has been great. But the tip that I'll quickly share is one of the things that I was looking at was going into the map. I typically don't go to the map very much, the radar, right? Where you're looking to see the precipitation of the clouds and the different colors, zooming over your area. But I didn't know on the map that I could pinch and zoom and move around to a different location, and I can tap and hold my finger on an area on the map. And it pulls up this little kind of, I think Apple officially calls it the context menu, where it can say, you can look at the weather, view details for that particular location, or you can add that location to your list of general locations. Now you can go in manually and you can add a city that you're going to, Chicago and Cleveland and Philadelphia, whatever. But I just love that you can go into the map itself. You can zoom around. You can find a location that you want to add, and you can tap and hold your finger on the map on a city, or it'll determine the closest area that you're tapping on there. And I just love that little information box popping up, because when I travel now, I know that I'm going to be driving across a state or so. Well, I can just move that map and tap and hold on that area to see what's it going to be like. I don't want to add that location to my maps, necessarily, but I can just go in and tap and quickly see that. So that was my tip. On the weather map, you can go in, tap and hold, and you get a very helpful context menu, which gives you a little bit more information about the areas that you are tapping on.
One of the reasons I'm glad that you shared this tip today is that, I'm a big user of Carrot Weather. I love that app. It's so powerful.
Yes.
But as a result, I haven't been paying much attention to Apple's weather app over the years.
Right.
And when I saw that you were going to mention this today, I took another look at it, and you're right. It's it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. Right. It's a nice app, and it's far, far, far better than it was years ago. So
absolutely.
And it's built in. So, it's got some cool features. It's very, very nice.
If you just need the basics, like if you've used Dark Sky, to me, the Apple is doing an excellent job of incorporating that. But if there's any more information that you want in the currents, and if you're really into that meteorological stuff, then definitely go to something that's going to be a lot bigger. You're probably already using something like Carrot Weather or Weather Station or Weather Tracker or something like that. So that's good.
Good stuff.
Your turn, sir.
My tip today was something that I may have mentioned in the past, but I don't believe I checked it. It was never a formal in the know tip of the week. And that is how I deal with my email notifications. I get so many emails, dozens and dozens of them, that if my iPhone were to beep or to vibrate every time an email came in, it would be like a massager. It'd be constantly vibrating. That would be crazy. So what instead I've done is I have mine set up that by default, I don't get notifications for any new emails. However, there are some people that I'm dealing with, clients or other attorneys that I work with, or my spouse or whoever else, that really does matter to me. And so what I'm recommending that you consider using is the VIP function. And there's sort of two parts to it. The first part of it is within the mail app itself. To really enable it, when you're looking at your list of mail messages, you want to tap at the very top left where there's a little button to go back to your list of mailboxes, and there's an edit button at the top right. And when you tap on that edit button, you'll see the mailboxes you normally see: inbox, sent, draft, but you'll see all sorts of other options that are not enabled by default, and you can choose to enable or disable any of those by clicking the little button, tapping the button next to them. But one of them that you'll see listed is VIP, for very important person. So go ahead and enable that, and then you can get out of the edit mode, and now you'll have a VIP folder. But I'm not even suggesting that you go to the VIP folder. You just want to have it enabled, because once it's enabled in that list, you'll see along the right side of it, there's like an eye and a circle, the universal information icon. And if you tap on that, it will indicate who are your VIPs. And if you don't have anyone set, or if you just have a few, near the bottom, you can add another one. So this is where you would say, I want to add my boss. I want to add my spouse, whoever you're going to add as a VIP. So that's step one, who is a VIP. And then step two is go into the settings app, and then go to notifications and mail, or you can go to mail notifications, either way, and then get to your mail notifications. And what you want to do is, whatever you do for normal people, which for me is nothing at all, you want to specifically select the notifications for VIPs and then decide how you want to be notified. So for me, when a VIP email comes in, I have an alert turned on with no sound, because I still like my iPhone to be silent, but with vibration. So once you've gone through this process, the end result is I'm walking around, and if usually it's actually my Apple Watch, because I'm wearing my watch. If my watch vibrates, then that's going to be an indication that I didn't just get an email, because that happens all the time, but I got an email from somebody that matters to me right now.
From a VIP.
And then I would go and I could take a look at it on my watch or on my phone or whatever it happens to be. And you can even change it over time. Maybe you're working on a project, and for the next week, the Mr. John Doe is very important to your life for this week, but then after this week, it doesn't matter to you. And so put John Doe on the VIP list for the next week, and then John Doe comes off the VIP list after that. And I do that all the time. But that's a nice way to sort of keep a manage of your notifications. And then again, since you've turned on that VIP feature in your mail on the iPhone, you can actually look at that specific VIP folder and it will only show the emails from VIP people. That's what I love. Which if you're trying to zero in on some like an important email from an important person, it's great for that rather than scrolling your entire inbox. So it's a nice feature, and it's a little hidden because unless you sort of go through everything I've described to enable it and show that folder, it's not something that you might not see very often, but it's really powerful.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm very, very picky on who I put as a VIP. That's what you should be, right? Mm-hmm. But my wife has always been my consistent VIP because for that last little thing that you just mentioned, Jeff, it's that, she said, we'll be discussing something or, a bill that came in or so. She's like, well, I emailed that to you. 2 months ago or whatever. Well, instead of going and doing a search for it, or instead of going and trying to like scroll through my inbox and find, her name. No, she's a VIP. So I only go to the VIP folder in my iPhone and I can bring it up immediately. And then just the other thing that you said, I do exactly that. If I'm working with a client that I know is very important for a couple of months or so, where it's a very intense project, I will add them as a VIP because then I know I can go immediately into that folder and find that information and change the notification settings on that. Because you're right. Only for those emails that come into I don't have any notifications just like you except for VIP, and then those will even pop up on my iPhone screen. I just have it pop up right so that I can kind of read the subject line, that kind of a thing, really quickly. What a great tip on that. That's excellent. Whew, lots of iPhone stuff today, and it's bring it on. Bring on iPhone 14. I am so excited. We just have a couple of weeks before that. That'll be coming. Jeff, thanks as always for joining me, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.